So today I'm going to walk through, what are the key features of the Maples UI from an end user perspective. So at a high level, what Maples gives you is almost a one-click solution for, all of your grading and assessment needs. So starting from a finished rubric, I'll show you how you can use Maples to upload your rubric, organize your encounters, create a set of encounters that you want to grade, grade those encounters against the rubric, review the results for validation, change or correct the AI grades, leave comments on the grades, even share the grades with your other faculty on your team, and then, finally how to export the grades for reporting. Um, so, this is, sort of what the login page for Maples looks like. Once I sign into this page, what I see on the left-hand side panel here is, all the areas of this platform. So on the top over here, we have a user guide, which contains much of the information that I'm going to walk all of you guys through. We have a dashboard that gives you sort of a summary of all of your Maples activity that you've done so far. We have a place for managing all of the rubrics that we work with. We have a place to organize all of our encounters into groups so we can sort of grade them easily. We have a grading area and a few other advanced areas as well. Right. So the first thing we need before we grade anything is the rubric. Right. So in Maples, a rubric is basically a very structured scoring guide. And essentially, the Maples rubric defines all of the items that you want to grade for this particular activity or for this particular station. It defines, what modality that item should be graded against. For example, whether it should be graded against an audio or the video or the clinical note or, the transcript of the encounter. And it also defines the scoring criteria for that particular item as well. So in this session, I'm not going to be talking about how to create a rubric. That's something that we will share more tools to help you create that rubric in future sessions. But starting from a finished rubric, which is basically an Excel file, what I would do in Maples is, I would go to this rubric section. I would, upload a new rubric. I would give it a name. I'm going to be showing an OSCE rubric today. Let's call it, FOSCE demo. I would select that particular rubric wherever that is on my system. And I just click upload rubric, right? And I have this rubric uploaded onto Maples. So what this rubric looks like, for example, each rubric in Excel has a number of sheets, and each of those sheets determine what are the items for each station or for each case, right? And for each case, you can have a number of items. There's a mode that sort of determines what modality to be used to grade that particular item. What's that exact item that we're grading? For example, are we grading whether the student is introducing themselves, whether they're using open-ended questions at the beginning, whether they're outlining what will happen next. And we have a scoring criteria which basically defines exactly what how much of a score to give for what exactly the student is doing in the encounter. So we can define the scoring criteria from 1 to 5 or even more, however granular that you want to get. You can also have items that are graded from video. For example, whether they're inspecting the abdomen, whether they're palpating sort of all of the regions, and things like that. And then items that depend on the note. For example, are they documenting the onset of pain location, or they documenting pain quality and pain severity, and things like that. So once I have a rubric uploaded, what I want next is basically a set of encounters that I want to use this rubric against. So in most learning management systems, these encounters are keyed by either an activity or a case. And that's exactly the keywords that Maples gives you to search for these encounters. You can also search by typing in a learner name. So for example, let me type in a learner name that I have. I've just created this learner, just let's call him John Demo. And if I click on John Demo, I can even add more learner names, as well to get more results. I can add an activity to filter by, that specific activity. But for now, let's look at, what encounters I have belonging to John Demo, right? So when I click search encounters, all the encounters, all the activities and cases that John Demo has ever gone through show up on my screen. It looks like John Demo has gone through, an year two fall OSCE, and they've gone through about five different cases or stations for this particular OSCE. And that's exactly what I want to grade. So let me, select all of these encounters. I can also select all. And then, I'll create a group of, the encounters that I've selected. So I'm selecting just one learner right now, but you can select, as many learners across activities or cases, as long as, you put in the right search criteria, you'll get, all the right results from your learning management system. And let's call this group John Demo Test. And I'm going to create a group containing all of these encounters. And I can click on this button over here on the left side, where I can see, exactly there's five encounters in this group. There's just one learner, and there's five different cases across one activity. So, once I create this group, I can click on grade, which is going to take us to our grading area. So the grading area has a few options. The first one is group, and we've just selected the John demo test, which is basically the group of encounters that we want to create. There's another option for rubric, and we're going to select the rubric that we have just uploaded, which was FOSCE demo 2, which is the name that we gave to our rubric. There's a few other options here as well. For example, there's a localizer option. There's a mosaic videos option. If you hover over the eye over here, it'll tell you exactly what that option does. For example, the localizer, it localizes video grading to just the physical exam component. In mosaic videos, it'll stitch multiple camera angles together so that you can save, on some tokens while you're grading. Maples also works with multiple AI providers. So once you click on model config, you can select, exactly who is, what model you want to use for grading. For example, whether you want to use a Gemini model or whether you want to use an OpenAI model, or you just want to use the default models, right? So if I just use server defaults, it'll just stick to the default models. I have, once I do that, I see something which pops up and that says, station mapping required. And basically what the station mapping does is for every, activity and case that you have in your learning management system, it's asking you, what sheet of this rubric that I've uploaded that I want to grade on. So the sheet that I've uploaded contains, rubrics for, almost 10 different for 10 different stations. But the group that I've created has, only five different cases. So for the 1B case, I'm going to select the 1B sheet from the uploaded rubric. Likewise, for the 2B case, I'm going to select the 2B sheet. Um, Likewise for 3, 4, and 5. So once I've said, exactly use this sheet to use to grade this particular case, I can confirm mapping. There's a tip that says, hey, use a localizer for grading your OSCEs. I'm going to click on enable so that, the video part of my grading is now only done on the physical exam portion. So once I do that, all I have to do is click start grading and sit back. So, once this grading run is on its way, you can also, see its progress as it goes through. It wasn't pending, it just moved to running. there's about 0 of 5 encounters that are graded. And, typically it takes about an encounter a minute to grade. So this is going to take, about 5 minutes before we see our results. So what I've done is I've basically ran the exact same, set of encounters, just before this meeting so that we can see what it looks like, sort of after all of these encounters are graded. Um, so I see an option here. It says completed. I see an option to view results. And if I click on view results, it'll take me to our result workspace. So on this workspace on the top, you can see the rubric that we have used to grade, what's the group that we have used to grade, who are the students in this particular group. And then I can navigate by, which student or which encounter I'm looking at. But sort of the most important thing here is that I have this main panel, and on this panel I can see exactly the media related to that encounter. So for example, I can see the video, I can see, I can hear the audio, I can look at the note that was written during this encounter, or I can read a transcript for this encounter. And on the right side I see what the AI grading results are. So in this section, I can see an item key, exactly what that item is grading. For example, here it says whether the student has used statements of understanding and support during their encounter. I can see the evidence that the AI is citing from the encounter to grade that student. I can see the rationale that the AI is using to give its final grade. So it says, the student uses more than one statement. Um, and that's enough to give it a score of 3. And if I agree with what the AI is saying, I can click accept AI. And if I want to make a change, or if I want to review, what the AI's grade is, I can click on review, and that gives me a nice convenient panel showing me exactly what the rubric that we uploaded said, what the AI score was, and if I want to make a change, I can make a change right here, and I can leave a comment saying this encounter only deserves a 2 because, and I can save a review right here. Uh, you know, and likewise for, for example, for the node grading, what I can say is documentation of pain and radiation. I go on the notes section. I see the section over here. I see, for example, the AI has said that the student's note does not contain any information. If I agree with that, I can click on accept AI. Once I've done my review step for validation, what I can do is I can go on and export my final Excel file, which is an Excel file that contains sort of all of the encounters, all of the grades, and all of the details that that the students in this particular group have got on my OSCE. So there's also an option to filter this set of results. I can filter by percentile. I can filter by, whether the review is pending, whether I've accepted, and also I can filter by, certain item keys if I want to only review, this particular set of items at each time. So going back, it looks like this encounter has completed. This group has basically completed grading. And so another thing I can do over here is click on details. If I click on details, it kind of gives me, a summary of the cost that it or the amount of money I had to spend to grade the set of encounters. It looks like it's taking about 64 cents to grade each encounter. Over here, what are it'll break up the costs by how much it's taking to create the audio, note, or video. And finally, another thing that I can do is, if I want to have another faculty look at this exact same, group of students, I can search. For example, I search by, Andrew Jamieson, and then, once I click on them, as long as they have a Maples account, they can also now see and help me review this set of encounters. Yeah, and that's, a brief overview of, what it looks like end to end when we're sort of trying to grade, encounters using Maples. And the output, of the grading pipeline essentially looks like this. We just have one student over here. So, the student's name, the case, the activity, other details about the room, the item key, the question text, the evidence, the rationale, the score that the AI gave, and if I choose to review that item, the score that the final expert gave, the reviewer's comments, and so on. So you have your entire, output sheet in one place so that you can use for reportage.